This is ABC Fora.
My name is Shai Agassi. I'm the founder and CEO of Better Place. I'm an Imagineer. I imagine the future and engineer towards it. And a lot of people have this tendency to do engineering forward, in which case we're bound by what we see around us. And a lot of people tend to do imagining, which is sort of I've been blamed to be only imagining, which is sort of the Disney thing, is hope for the best and it will happen. And I don't believe in either. I don't believe in imagining without engineering, and I don't believe with engineering just within the constraints of what we do today. You have to have both if you want to solve big problems, and you can't apply the methods that got us into trouble to getting us out of trouble. We're very lucky to have a situation today where we have created a glorious disaster. We have the entire planet climate changing on us at speeds that we have not seen before. We are running out of oil. The entire car industry is falling apart. The economy's in a global recession. Jobs are short. And it's such a great opportunity because you can't solve one of these elements and ignore the other ones. We cannot solve for the car industry by creating more cars of the past. That won't work. We cannot solve climate by destroying the economy even more. We can't save the economy but then destroy the planet, because 10 years from now, what good would it do us? So we have to start thinking in holistic ways, and we have to start asking ourselves the real big tough questions. And we have to solve for them at scale. It's not good enough to go build one electric car. It's not good enough to build one beautiful green building. We have to start asking the real big questions. And so I got tackled with an enormous question, one of those open-ended conversational starters you shouldn't throw at a 40-year-old because they create a midlife crisis. How are you going to make the world a better place by 2020? Open-ended, but limited in time. And I came back from that question at a World Economic Forum in 2005 with another question in my mind. How would you run an entire country without gasoline, but without altering the way we live? Not by forcing people not to drive, but not by changing the way we build cities, but in a way that is pragmatic, based on the science that we have off the shelf, not in some lab, in some research somewhere down the road, without inventing new economics and working within the confines of consumer tastes as we know them today. How would you run an entire country without gasoline? It took me the better part of 2 years to come up with an answer. I went down every possible mistake. I started thinking it will be biofuels. And I ran through 6 months of assessing every possible biofuels and realizing at the end of the day, with all the incentives and everything that was put in places like the US, for example, we generate 5 days worth of driving from biofuels, and the other 360. You know how we say there are 360 days in a year? It's the other 5 that we do with biofuels, and the other 360 we did with oil. And that's with massive investments to the tune of about $90 billion over the last 5 years. And realizing that in this case it just doesn't scale. I went down hydrogen. I was absolutely positively sure it will be hydrogen. Only to realize that that's probably the stupidest idea ever invented by mankind. You take an electron, you pack it with a proton that's 2,000 times bigger, you send it all the way to the car, you build a whole new infrastructure at hundreds of billions of dollars, only to strip the proton from the electron and use the electron at the car. That's not a smart idea given the fact that we've built the grid, man's greatest accomplishment, that actually knows how to send the electron without the proton. In that case, why do you pack it? And that brought me to the idea that actually the only way to do it is by going directly to electrons. And you need to build an electric car, an infrastructure that will solve the issue for an electric car. That created our base hypothesis. In other words, we translated the question, how do you run an entire country without gasoline, to the following hypothesis. It will sound almost stupid in its simplicity. But interestingly enough, nobody's ever answered that hypothesis before. If you will give consumers, as they come to the car dealership, a car that is more convenient than a gasoline car, that costs less than a gasoline car, by and large, they will buy it. at which point they'll be willing to pay the same amount of money per kilometer to drive that car as gasoline, as petrol, in the station. Now, everybody goes like this, sounds logic, yet every attempt in the past has gone against that hypothesis. We figured out the car is limited by the size of the battery. As a result of the fact that it's limited by the size of the battery, let's build a small car that will be a bit lighter. Let's give up 2 seats, make it tiny, sort of like a golf cart, only with roof. And then it has limited range to drive, but because we put the battery inside and we make a small number of them, it will cost $40,000, $50,000. And so we asked the consumer to go buy a car that is less convenient and costs more. Then we got surprised by the fact that they just didn't do it. Very few of them did, and we got surprised by the fact that there was no adoption, which was proof to the fact that everybody wants to buy oil. Hence, we got to stay on oil. We came back with the exact opposite set of questions. How would you make a car battery, much like the one that's depleting from my jacket? Sorry. How would you go in the car that goes on a battery that's limited by today's science to about 120 miles, 100 to 120 miles, that would still be more convenient than a gasoline car? As you can see, this is a fractal of questions that we started to unfold over the last 4 years. And we found out that the answer is actually in infrastructure. Much like every solution that we know today that we use on a day-to-day basis, the answer comes in the form of infrastructure. We didn't start with Google. We started with fiber in the ground. We didn't start with cell phones. We started with towers. We didn't start with cars. We started with gas stations before major adoption has happened.
This is ABC Fora.